Good morning, it's Tuesday the 6th of April. Welcome to Wake Up Well. My name's David Patton. Today I'm going to be reading from Matthew 28, verses 11 to 15. And the heading in the Bible is called The Soldiers Are Bribed. And I guess I would add the soldiers are bribed to spread fake news. So the context is that Jesus has just risen from the dead, and the two Marys have just discovered him. The stone has been rolled away, and as he has appeared to them and told them to rejoice. And the section after the scripture that I'm reading this morning is the Great Commission. And so I just find that the sandwiching of the passage that I'm going to read today quite fascinating. So I start at verse 11. It says, "Now while they were going, behold, some of the guard came into the city and reported to the chief priests all the things that had happened. When they had assembled the elders and consulted together, they gave a large sum of money to the soldiers, saying, 'Tell them, his disciples came at night and stole him away while we slept. And if this comes to the governor's ears, we will appease him and make you secure.' So they took the money and did as they were instructed. And this saying is commonly reported among the Jews until this day." I found this little passage quite fascinating, just following the Easter weekend, where actually scores of families have been spreading fake news about the Easter Bunny. That the Easter Bunny has been, and that the Easter Bunny has brought and bestowed chocolate upon their children, and that's a form of fake news that has been spread as part now of the Easter tradition. And we're also in the context of COVID, and with the advent of social media, there's so much fake news that is spread through that vehicle. And the whole COVID, is it a scam? What's the conspiracy theories that are running throughout social media? Is it just a flu? Is it more than that? Are we being controlled by Big Pharma and the governments? And so there's so much contrasting news being shared at the moment, and on the back of the US election. Again, that was just a whole fascinating microcosm of trying to discern what was true and what was fiction. Can be quite challenging in current times. And so I think one of the key questions I have for people today is what's your methodology for discerning truth in such times? And I just got a quote from Brené Brown, that she says that in the absence of data, we will always make up stories. In fact, the need to make up a story, especially when we are hurt, is part of our most primitive survival wiring. Mean-making is in our biology, and our default is often to come up with a story that makes sense, feels familiar, and offers us insight into how best to self-protect. And I just thought the ending to that quote around, the story has to make sense to us. And clearly the story of Jesus is resurrected, he's alive, he is risen, is actually hard to believe. It doesn't make sense, because when people die, they die. They generally don't come back to life. So clearly the truth was hard to believe. It didn't make sense. She also said about it feels familiar. And again, of course, it doesn't feel familiar to go, this person died and now they've risen from the dead. That's uncomfortable to believe. It raises up lots of other questions to believe that that's even possible. And also she said that it offers us insight into how best to self-protect. And so clearly the stories that we make up in the absence of data are a form of self-protection, which makes perfect sense, because when we're frightened, when there's so much uncertainty, when there's so much contrasting information to believe, we just want some sense of certainty. We want to feel safe. We want to feel that we know what is happening, so we will just draw a line in the sand regardless of whether that line is accurate or not. And so my key question for people today is what's your methodology? What's your data set? What data do you go to for discerning the truth about whatever issue it may be. And I just love in